So how did I meet Per? So maybe you think that I have an unfair advantage being in Sweden, but actually I met Per in Israel the first time. So that was ISCA 89, so I think I have the record so far. We have worked together quite a lot in Sweden, so our research groups have met frequently, and we have did workshops together on boats. We call them ship shops. They were really fun, and sometimes they were also educational. One more comment before I start my talk. So Michel talked about him being opponent at Per's dissertation defense. He missed one small item there. So when Michel started to question Per, he got out a chainsaw. And Per didn't like that at all. Okay, so I was in industry for a while, moved back to academia and to Sweden in '99. Question is what to do. So you've been in industry. Are you going to do architecture research? And I really felt at that point that it wasn't fun to do architecture. But I felt that industry were ahead, at least in the server area that we have been working on. Performance modeling, that looked a lot more fun. So I went into performance modeling for a while. So why did I do this? Well, you know, I don't want to look back at the way architecture research was then, but what do we do right now with architecture research? Well, we have taught to do research in the quantitative style. We have to do massive simulation. So we typically model new ideas in the simulator, typically GEM5. Who knows how accurate that is? The baseline is typically some GEM5 configuration that nobody fully understands what it is. Requirement is that the simulation, the black box, the simulator has to pop out an answer that says this proposal is 10% better than anything other that's been proposed. I don't know how realistic that is. The technology model for this experiment is to use Cacti or some other tools from academia. And there is a large focus on big core, how to make the big fat cores execute most efficiently. And the question is, sub-question here is that really the most important question? That is one important question, but is that the only question to focus on right now? Typically, this kind of research fosters incremental research, not only incremental research, but it's much easier to produce an incremental research paper, squeeze it into GEM5, and get the results out. And we're not comparing with state of the art from industry. And part of the reason for that is that we don't know what the industry is doing. So after, you know, Wisconsin has been suing all these companies, nobody dares to tell what it really is underneath the hood out there. So it's hard. It's not only the researcher's fault, it is also industry's fault. We don't know what the heck they are doing. So what are the industry doing? Well, as I've been doing a sabbatical over the last 2 years in Oracle, while they still had a hardware business and then also at Samsung. So what do they do in industry? Well, they mostly do incremental design. They make yet another generation, slightly better caches, slightly faster something. The baseline they use in their studies is much more aggressive because it's a full-fledged out-of-order core, not just the GEM5 configuration. If they see a 0.5% improvement, they get really excited. I mean, that is the kind of accuracy they need to see in their tools. They need to be able to sift out an idea with that little improvement, and you pile 20 of those improvements together, and you get 10% per generation. 10% per generation. They have good understanding of underlying technology. They also have corporate research. They're looking like 5 years ahead. And they also have a long list of pending potential incremental improvements they would have liked to put in this generation, but it will have to wait to the next generation. So the question is, why should industry care about our incremental research in academia? Well, one reason they should do that is, let's say that in the top 4 or 5 conferences we publish 200 papers. Each one gives 10% improvement. That's a lot of percentage improvements over 1 year. So if industry is going for a 10% improvement between generations, why don't they just harvest all they need here? Why do they try to add those 0.5% to get the improvement? I don't know the answer. It really scares me. I don't like this. There seems to be a big disconnect between the two worlds, and I would like to understand why. So I think that we should shift our research focus. Are we done with computer architecture research? Are we done everything? No, absolutely not. But I think we maybe should move away a little bit from the incremental research which I think industries can do quite well themselves, and focus more on paradigm shifts instead. And as an example of a paradigm shift that I've been working on recently, so that's one of the startups as well, but this has been developed in academia, something called green cash. It's called green cash because you can save a lot of energy, and you can also become very rich if you work with this. So I was as I told you, I was doing performance modeling, and I wasn't paying much attention to architecture research for a while. The program committee meeting for ISPAS happened to be co-located with Micro 2012. So what the heck, I can just attend Micro. And it turned out to be a lot of fun. So I got hooked on computer architecture again. It was a really fun conference, and at that conference, these ideas of green cache was born. So what is the green cache about? So I told you it's a paradigm shift. So let's look at how we normally implement cache hierarchies. So typically in the cache hierarchy, we have the cache lines. They are fused together with the metadata in forms of address tags. Okay? So there you have the address tags in each of the caches, one per cache line. And this metadata answers a very local question. The question is the data here? Full stop. Okay? So when you would like to find a cache line, you go and you ask the first cache, is the data here? By comparing the address tags. Actually, typically, depending on the associativity, maybe there would be 8 possible locations, 16 possible locations, and so on. So ask all those 16 possible metadata, is the data here? Answer no, you go to the next level, and you go to the next level, and so on. So it's a hierarchical search, and you get a green dot there, so maybe you find the data, and you can return the data. So on a bad day, you don't even find the data in the last level cache, but maybe the directory will tell you it's some other node. Now a hierarchical search starts the other way around. You start to search L2 of the left node, and then L1 of that left node. And of course, race conditions can happen and so on. So this is how caches are implemented today. It's not simple in any way. Quite a lot of race conditions, the cache coherence protocol are quite complex. So it's expensive. All this searching is expensive. Searching also adds lots of latency. So what we did in Green Cache was to say you don't need to actually implement the metadata in the shape of address tags. Can you have some other kind of metadata? So that's what we did. We introduced a new kind of metadata called a cache line pointer. And the cache line pointer answers a more global question, which is where is the data? So what I do here in the picture, I have the metadata storage in the middle there. And in the metadata storage, I store the metadata that tells where a specific cache line is. So it says it's in last level cache, way 5. Then I add a metadata hierarchy, so lots of metadata caches. And this is a small part of the entire the cache hierarchy. Maybe it's just 2% of the SRAM. And in this metadata cache hierarchy, you can cache metadata. So you cache this metadata with spills and fills. So for example, that metadata can be brought closer to the processor. Now, the processor, after accessing its local metadata, know exactly where the data is and can go there and get it in one access. So that's really good. These pointers are really small compared with address tags. So in a system like this, you would encode, you just need to tell which cache it's in and which associative way it is. So depending on how many caches you have and how many associative ways you have, well, 5-6 bits typically is sufficient. So that's good. The data storage, the normal data caches, is just SRAM. Once you have the pointer, you don't need to search, you don't need to compare. It's just SRAM, a bunch of SRAM. So it's a sea of SRAM. It doesn't even have to be hierarchical. It's a sea of SRAM that sits around the chip. And that it gives you very interesting kind of topologies. Cache line pointers, we implement special cache coherence protocol that keeps coherence for the data as well as for the cache line pointers. So the property of the cache line pointers is actually that they're deterministic. If they point to a place in the cache hierarchy where they think the data is, the data will be there when you go there to get the data. So you can really trust those pointers. There are lots of new topologies. As I said, you don't have to build hierarchies, and there are lots of placement options that are possible using this technology as well. So the net effect is that you can lower the L1 mislatency by 30%. You get 50% less traffic in the network on chip, and you can lower the dynamic energy by about 60%. Okay, so that was my little flash of things that I've been spending my time on. And now to the important part of the talk, the perspective. So conferences are a lot of fun. And as I said, I met Per at ISCA the first time in Jerusalem. when PER chooses his conferences, his number one criteria where to go is where the location. It has to be a good place. And I'm going to talk about one specific conference here, and Per may remember this. So this was the Hawaii International Conference on System Science. This is a fine conference in a great location. And actually, Per was heading up a IEEE task force, and he decided that this task force had to meet at this distinguished conference. And we had a great time there. Unfortunately, these days, when you get back from a conference, you have all your pictures in your phone, and you can find them. You can just search for them. Back then, we had a different system. You took pictures with a camera, and then they ended up in a shoebox somewhere. And it's not so easy to find the pictures in the shoebox. So this is not my picture, and it's not even from this trip. And I really wanted to share some pictures from that conference. So I searched on the web. I picked images of Per Stenström. That's one. But none of them were on Hawaii, and especially they were not from 1999. So I figured out that there was another person on the web with quite a lot of pictures, and he looks exactly like Per. Okay, so I figured that maybe I can use those pictures instead. That's the cartoon version of 1010, and then this all the picture of Per, and here's the movie version of 1010. So I think we're gonna go with 1010 instead of Per. And by the way, I'm also a sailor, just like Per. All Swedes are. My PhD students call me the captain. Captain, my captain, they call me. So that's me, and it's Per, and we're walking in Hawaii, and it's really warm. Next stop, margaritas. That was big during that. That was the margarita conference, definitely. But it's not just fun stuff, not just drinking. You do a lot of interesting work as well. So actually, Per he's done some very instrumental work. Started early on in new trends in computer architecture, and already here at 1999, Per convinced me that we needed to start to do some deep learning. So that's the scuba dive. So we went on a scuba trip there. You remember that? Yeah. And that was a little bit scary for a while when the sharks came along, but we did fine. And also during that conference, Per started talking about neural networks. As I clearly remember, you talked a lot about neural networks, and there was one specific. Remember, this is a neural network prototype that Per had created already in 1999, and that's I think is pretty early on as well for that kind of. So Per is the second author on that work. So even this early kind of neural network, you could train it to drive a car. Even though it took much longer, the training took much longer back then. And there she is. So that was right when you just became father, and you talked a lot about that. That was important to you, and that's the research team. Next, I think Per had a little bit to do with that too. So finally, I must say it's fun to be a Per. It's fun to be on your 60th birthday, even though I don't fully understand why we celebrate your 60th birthday. All right? Is this an even number? Is this something special with 60?
It's not even a 2 to the.
Exactly, that was my point. I can understand when you celebrate your first birthday, your second, your fourth, your 8th birthday, your 16th, 20th, 32nd, 24th. Yeah. So 64th birthday, that's when we will be back here, because that's the real celebration. And if we miss that one, we're not really sure if there will be another one. So congratulations to you, Per.
Okay, thank you, Erik. Any questions?
Embarrassing questions.
So it sounded like that your duplicate tags or your tag metadata is precise.
Yeah,
obviously,
it's precise. We use the word deterministic, so you can trust it.
Yeah, no.
If it is, and this is unlike directories in a normal cache coherence directories. The directory may say the data is over there, but when you use that information and you go and try to get the data, it could actually be replaced before you get there. In our system, it cannot. It's deterministic, so we remove all the corner cases. There are no our coherence protocol is actually much simpler because of that.
Yeah, so when I was putting the duplicate tags in the MP Core technology, very similar to this.
Okay.
We modeled precise versus imprecise and
Okay.
decided the precise version was very non-scalable.
Uh-huh.
Did you not find limitations in
No,
going to
actually, the precise, it doesn't really cost us much. So the technique we use is that in order to make this precise, is that if you have an outstanding read request, right? And if you have an outstanding read request for a piece of data, if you get an invalidate while that is outstanding, instead of sending the acknowledgement back, you wait until data comes back, use it once, and then you send the acknowledgement back. So you sort of delay the stores, and that's how we can get the precise. So that should be very rare events.
Yeah, we just went through a cycle at a time on
Okay.
the lookup.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
I hope it's about the Hawaii conference.
No, so this reminds me a lot to the comma machine.
Aha.
It has the same ideas as your DDM machine.
Yeah,
Isn't
I'm
it?
a one-trick pony.
Yeah, yeah. This is already patented, so you're late.
Anything else? Oh. Yeah.
Your early slides on the disconnect between academia
Mhm.
and industry, you're absolutely on target. You're absolutely right. So a couple comments I want to make. One is your 200 papers giving 10% improvement, giving you 2,000%. The nonsense is that 10%, by the time you factor everything in, is probably minus 1% rather than plus 10%. So when industry, and you've worked in industry enough, so I assume, well, in fact, I'll ask you whether you want to confirm what I'm going to say, is when industry goes to a conference, they don't care about those bar graphs. They don't care at all about the numbers. They're doing their, as you point out, half of 1% every time. What they care about is ideas. In fact, a great paper producing a new idea that doesn't have that BS set of bar graphs is going to be more interesting to industry than any incremental 10%
Yeah,
whatever
yeah,
paper.
yeah.
So how do we change that? How do we get the conferences to stop publishing the nonsense 10%, which is really minus 1%, and again, like we used to do 30 years ago, publish the idea papers that didn't have this huge number of bar graphs along with them?
Well, I don't know, I don't want to, like your president, move history back all that far, right? I think it's, back in those days when we were building on beliefs, that was not good either. But I think that we need to find something in between, right? You shouldn't be, first of all, you shouldn't be forced to simulate every idea and come up with those numbers, because if it's a very drastic idea, then you can't simulate, not in GEM 5. I mean, it's so you really limit how drastic ideas you can work on if the requirement is GEM 5 and compared with So I don't know what the solution is, but I think this is a big problem.
Okay. Let's thank Erik again.